Council. And today I'd like to introduce to you our first look training session for CEH, the first that we're doing with New Horizons Bulgaria. But before I say anything, let me hand over to Mr. Nikolai first, the General Manager for New Horizons Bulgaria, to say something for 5 minutes. Nikolai, over to you.
Okay. Здравейте, добре дошли на нашия вебинар за етично хакерство. Виждам, че почти всички гости са от България, така че ще говоря на български. Така че добре дошли. Днес на тази сесия ще говорим за един от основните модули на Certified Ethical Hacker. Наш лектор ще бъде Уейн Бърк, който ще бъде представен след мъничко. Иначе за New Horizons повечето от вас виждам, че се познаваме от години. Ние водиме тренинги в областта на информационната сигурност вече от 2006 година, няколко години, над 200 души вече са минали на различни високотехнологични програми при нас. С CC Council започнахме да работим от тази година, като една от най-популярните системи, програми за обучение по информационна сигурност. Връщам думата на нашите колеги от CC Council. Sharon, I'm giving cover to you.
Thank you, Nikolai. Now, without more further ado, let's start this session. Let me just start with a short introduction about CEH and the topic of the training series that we are doing today. Okay, first let me start. Who is a CEH? A CEH is a certified ethical hacker, a skilled professional who understands and knows how to look for weaknesses and vulnerabilities in your systems. He uses the same knowledge and tools as a malicious hacker to access the security posture of a target system. Now, why are we concentrating on CEH today? IT security is one of the most up-and-coming security threat globally today. And EC Council has come up with CEH in order to inform all IT users and all security experts on how vital CEH is and how vital IT security is in everybody's everyday life. So why do we choose CEH? As you can see my screen, it is the most comprehensive ethical hacking certification in the world today. And it is the only attack-based course available. It's also been endorsed by the DoD Directive 85070, and it meets the highest CNSS of NSA standards. It's a 70% hands-on course, and it contains more than 60 plus domains, 10 gigs of hacking tools, and over 3,000 pages of courseware. It's a compilation of more than 300 subject matter experts globally in developing the contents. It requires a 40-hour, 5-day training in order for you to be able to understand and attempt the exam. It's certified by professionals from the FBI, the CIA, the US DoD, Microsoft, Symantec, Deloitte, and Fortune 500 companies. Now, the latest version of CEH, we have just launched the new CEH version 7 on 14th of March, which is about a month ago. So you are all very lucky to be able to have the latest version of the CEH that we have just launched globally. Now, without much further ado, instead of listening to me, I'd like to introduce to you our lead trainer for today, Mr. Wayne Burke. He is our certified EC Council instructor, and he's certified in CHFI, LPT, ECSA, and CEH. He's also won the EC Council Instructor of the Year Award 2010. He has delivered numerous assignments and customized trainings for law enforcement, police, government bodies, military units, and NSA, FBI, you name it, from around the world. Wayne's experience in IT security spans across penetration testing, ethical hacking, digital forensics, wireless technologies, and so on. I will let him speak for himself. And now, over to you, Wayne.
Great, thanks, Sharon. I'll just speak for about 33 seconds while I get the screen changed over.
Sure.
Please. Well, good morning, folks, and afternoon, evening, if some of you folks may be joining us from other parts of the world. First of all, just wanted to thank you all for inviting me to present this session. And I can tell you this much, we are going to have a lot of fun. You know, a lot of people, when they attend some of these webinars, tend to think that they can be kind of boring. Well, if you haven't attended one of my sessions, boring is not a word that fits into my vocabulary. And so, first off, we're going to be looking at one of the most important aspects of penetration testing. And I'm going to save you all the time and hassle and not worry about doing an introduction. I think Sharon covered that all. I don't believe I'm a guru in every single thing that we do. Of course, I just try to put a lot of effort and time into security. And IT security is, of course, where I have my passion. And with version 7 just being released, I've got to tell you folks, as you're going to see through the session, we're not just going to be flipping through slides. I'm going to be covering quite a vast array of hands-on practical skills so that you can really get a good taster for what the CH version 7 is all about now, and also what are the latest skills that the malicious folks may be using to circumvent some of your security in your systems. So, footprinting and reconnaissance, when you go out and do a penetration test, I see this day in, day out. Well, maybe exaggerating a little there. I see this so often that engineers that have got experience in security, they always want to get down to the exploitation. They want to own those systems. But in order to get your attacks to a level of success, we've got to understand that it's imperative to cover the footprinting and reconnaissance. As an ex-law enforcement officer, I had to do my national service. You might hear from the accent, it's not really British, it's not really South African. I've lived in a lot of different parts of the world, recently moved over to Europe again, where I was based before that out in the USA in Texas. You might obviously not tell with the Texan accent because it's not real Texan, but nevertheless, when I go around to all these different parts of the world working with various different agencies, various different organizations, we see this so often that the folks want to go out, do an automated pen test effectively where they want to scan your systems and then try and run these automated tools. That is really not penetration testing, that's vulnerability assessment. And so my highlight today's session is going to be, if we don't collect the information we need, effectively creating a blueprint of that target organization so that we're able to find out what the CEO does for his personal enjoyment perhaps, what blogs, what forums they communicate in, and of course very importantly is what is the structure of their infrastructure, their network. How do they connect to the World Wide Web, or how do they connect to, you know, global resources that's going to be offered throughout perhaps their country and globally at the same time. So there's huge amounts of security news that keeps popping up. I don't want to spend too much time on some of the news because a lot of you folks, I'm sure, would have been following the WikiLeaks and a lot of the new vulnerabilities coming out for a huge array of platforms. So today we're going to be looking at defining footprinting. We'll cover the objectives. We'll then specify some of the actual threats that footprinting has against the company. We'll look at internet footprinting, competitive intelligence, where you might have one of your competitions trying to break or try to get an edge in the market by trying to predict or try and get into your systems to see what's going to be your new products that you're going to be launching, let's say. And with competitive intelligence, it gives us the ability to effectively collect this information and link it, as you'll see, from a hierarchical point of view, meaning from the corporations that might be doing business with that with that company, and we'll then dive deeper into finding out information on who owns those systems through who is footprinting, DNS footprinting. We'll then move into the network, websites, email, Google hacking. We'll be looking at some of the tools that we can utilize, and of course it's always very helpful to have a nice kit of equipment that we can use to, of course, achieve our objectives. And then we'll finish off with some of the countermeasures and pen testing, specifically looking at this importance of actually collecting this blueprint and then launching the attacks further on. So that's pretty much just a look at the module flow. You can just see, I think these slides are absolutely stunning. The graphics that's gone into this, it makes delivering the CH such a pleasure. So we want to start off with some of the basic terminologies throughout the session. So we're going to start off with effectively open source passive information gathering. This is where we're not actually going to be connecting to any of those target systems. We're going to be looking at using some real live scenarios where, let's say, your company might be targeted, and we need to see what kind of security posture your company has as far as a hacker would be looking down at the target systems. So passively meaning we're not going to be connecting to those systems. Active information gathering is where you start actually connecting to the systems, where you start polling them for information, whether it be using digital social engineering or whether it be just using tools that will actually be connecting to, let's say, your web servers, your mail servers, and so forth. For the most part, this is all done anonymously because we're launching this from the web. And when it comes to, again, the footprinting aspect of it, what is footprinting? Well, effectively, it's the art of uncovering, collecting target information, and it might be information, as I mentioned, on your network. We need to try and find out what operating systems the company's using, what applications they might be using on the client computers, the desktops, and that's, of course, done so that we can start quantifying what potential weaknesses there are, and we can then look to further down the line exploit those. So realistically, the difference between penetration testing and vulnerability assessment is pretty vast. With vulnerability assessment, you would just take note of the potential weaknesses. But with regards to vulnerability assessment, you're not actively hacking the system. You're just looking at potential areas of weaknesses, whilst with penetration testing, the term penetration testing comes from the simple fact that we are going to find a potential weakness and then we're going to attempt to penetrate that, therefore being able to quantify whether it be a positive weakness or a negative weakness, because some of those automated vulnerability assessment tools, they may actually throw back some false positives, false negatives, so they don't always come back with the exact information. When we start specifically looking at the types of techniques that we can use, as you'll see, we really don't need too many tools at this moment in time, especially in this section, because the web is our friend and Google's probably our best friend. So when we look at collecting network information, we're going to start off with the domain names. We'll look at what types of network blocks they have, the IP addresses that would be reachable as far as the internet is concerned, any potential rogue websites, private websites, what networking protocols have been used, VPN or virtual private network points, any kind of access control lists on the routers, on IDSs, and also what types of telephone systems are in use. So rather than just speaking through some of these objectives, let's take a quick look at how we would start off with collecting this information. Now, I predominantly prefer to use a Linux system for a lot of the penetration testing, and I'm sure a lot of you folks may have already heard of Backtrack. Backtrack is a phenomenal live CD. Live CD meaning that we don't actually have to install Backtrack on a system. If, let's say, you're new to Linux and you want to get used to some of the specifications of actually using a Linux operating system, it's great that you can just boot the computer from a CD or DVD or even from a flash drive or an external hard disk. So it makes life for a security professional, but also for the malicious folks out there breaking into your systems a lot easier, as you folks will see. It is free open source. It's based off of Ubuntu. And of course, with over 350 security tools already installed, it is a phenomenal tool set to use for doing your real penetration testing. And just to take a quick look, I'll give it about 3 seconds for it to refresh so you all see the same thing I'm seeing. But if I clicked on the little dragon at the bottom left, that is effectively the same as your Windows Start. And we go down to the backtrack menu, you can see how all of the tools have been arranged into a pretty straightforward, decent hierarchy. So it makes it pretty easy to actually know which tools that you can actually use in this section. And so before I actually go into using some of the specific tools, we were speaking about how do we find out the domain names and IP addresses and that kind of stuff. And what we're going to look at is doing this real world. And the first tool I'm going to use is a browser. Bear in mind that I believe the session is being recorded. I'm just going to maximize my screen so we get to see the full effect there. Again, I'll just give it a few seconds for you to all catch up. Refresh. So the website that I've opened is a website called dirk-loss.de/online tools. So this is just really a website with all of the shortcuts to some of these publicly available websites that we can actually utilize for doing our network information gathering. And then as we go further down the list, you'll see that a lot of these resources give us the ability to actually do a lot more than just your network information gathering. So let's take a scenario right now, and we're going to use the first website called serversniff.net. Pretty cool looking little graphic there. You can see how that dude's got a pretty big nose to sniff stuff. I've got to, have some humor here, folks. So if we go along to the top tabs, you can see if you hover your mouse over it, you will have an array of different options as you go through the menu items at the top. So the first thing I want to do, effectively, let's say, is find out what the internet presence of, we're going to pick Dutch Bank, and we'll use ing.nl to make it realistic. And we can see, obviously, it's live. So I want to now start finding out more information on their connected internet presence. So I'm going to go to the reports menu, and I'm going to click on the NS report, which is your name server report. In the actual name server report, I've got to specify the domain, so I'll use ing.nl, and we can then just click on the generate report. And you'll see within a few seconds the amounts of information that we're going to get come back. First off, you can see, well, you will see in about 3 seconds, it's already created a pretty straightforward topology view of ING's mail server network infrastructure. So we're able to see the actual mail servers that they actually have. We can see that they have some of them in the Netherlands, well, based upon the namespace at least. And then we can see we have some others that are in a different internet domain, so the ing.be. And we can also see the IP addresses already of those different mail servers. So what's quite easy to see just from this initial, this is a 10-second quick look, that we can tell quite quickly what address ranges are effectively in use so far. They got the net ID of 145, 221, 98, 232, 229. We can actually see their net ID, their block being 145.221.0.0/17. This is all, of course, very helpful because there we were specifically just looking at their mail systems right now. The second portion, we also see that they use another net ID of 193.178.209. And at the same time, we've been able to find out the autonomous system number, which is for the BGP routing and how they connect to, the rest of the world. So again, we're now able to get quite a bit of details from their mail infrastructure. And also, if we now look at their name server network structure, we can again see that they're using pretty much the same block addresses. So we would be able to find a lot of other systems in those net IDs, and we will now take this a little further. Further down the list, we get to see some of the name server records, such as your MX records, start of authority, and what types of recursive queries are actually allowed. And if they should be allowed, of course, that could be a pretty big problem. So within a few seconds, I've been able to get quite a bit of information already on this live target bank, ing.nl, and that's just the first portion of the actual report there. If I now go along to looking at the IP tools, I could continue, of course, to build these additional reports, but there's so many other options. This is just the first example that I wanted to show you folks of using some of these online passive recon skills. And I'm going to go back now, and I want to use another website, which is another one of the very popular websites out there, called RobText, or RobText. And again, we'll see very similar I feel lucky today, so I'm going to click on the lucky button. And with RobText, you can actually see you've got an array of results that appear through looking at the different tabs. So if I click on summary, that's going to give me a summary of ING. It's going to give me their internet presence, their IP address for their ing.nl website. If I click on records, I can see some of their publicly registered records. So we can see they have some of the infrastructure in Belgium as well. And we can see an array of the addresses that are already being used. If I click on the graph button, we get to see something that was very similar to the previous tool that I showed you folks, which was the server sniff. And you can see again that it gives us a very quick overview, but also a nice depicted diagram of the internet presence for these systems already. And we're going to, of course, continue to take this further. If we click on the Share tab, we get to see if there's any other websites being shared on the same IP address. And in this instance, of course, you would expect that a pretty large bank would not actually have their systems hosted and shared at the same time. This is normally for smaller companies that would actually have their website hosted at some service provider location. Clicking on the Who Is tab, we can see that the registrar is Verizon Netherlands BV, and if we go further down the list, not too much information there yet, but of course we will expand on this. And also on the Blacklist tab, we can see if they've been blacklisted on any sites out there. And then the Analysis tab, we get to, again, continue to dive a bit deeper into looking at if there's any answers coming back from some of those online systems, and also if we can find any contact information for ING. So realistically, hopefully you are all still following me. You can see I could continue to go through an array of these additional tools that we can use, and of course it all depends on your actual project scope, how much time you've been given. For the most part, the more popular types of penetration tests nowadays are black box pen tests, which means we would go in as a group of pen testers as if we are going to be as closely as possible emulating what malicious hackers would do, and we would not have anything else other than really the company name which we would then go and scour the web and, of course, start linking and creating this blueprint topology so that when we get ready to actually launch our attack phase of the pen test, well, of course, we know what types of weapons we want to be using for greater success rates. And I say this to so many people all the time, that if you don't do your reconnaissance properly or you don't do enough reconnaissance, your actual attacks are going to fail. So that was the first section where you could see how quickly I was able to just get some of this information in the first collecting the network information. If we start specifically looking now at the system information, we will of course be able to find out things such as the user and group names through enumeration. We'll want to be looking at the system architecture, the remote system types, the system names, passwords, and of course we want to dive deeper into that and find out employee details, organization websites, company directories, and we've got to understand that footprinting does pose a risk to your organization. Remember, if your company is disclosing information publicly without actually knowing it, specifically if you have, let's say, one of your tech support folks that post information in a news group, and we would actually scour the news groups as well to see if anybody from that organization has actually posted in any news groups, and we'll then try and attract information or extract information from them by posting information on those news groups saying, well, can you give us more details of your configuration, and we will be able to give you some more detailed help. And of course, we've got to realize that these are being posted in publicly accessible forums. So the threats would of course include business loss, potential corporate espionage, privacy loss, social engineering, system and network attacks, and information leaks, which of course is not something that a lot of companies really want to actually have when it comes to the security of their systems. So the footprinting methodology, you start off with looking initially at the internet footprinting, which is something that you've just seen me go out and do a few demonstrations. We're then going to be moving into competitive intelligence. Who is footprinting, DNS footprinting, network footprinting, and then diving deeper into their web infrastructure, email, and we can actually use Google to help us out with a lot of some of these techniques. So Google is our best friend, and obviously finding out a company's domain name or URL is no rocket science. Locating the internal URLs could be a little bit more difficult, and I want to show you another popular website that I get a big kick out of. This is a website called Rate My Network. I might need to Google for that. Just Rate My Network diagrams or something. I wasn't far off. Rate My Network diagram. And well, this is cool, folks. You get some of those real geeks that want to, show off their wonderful looking network diagrams, and so what they do, they post them publicly to the RateMyNetworkDiagram.com website. And let's take a look at some of the popular large networks that people have made publicly available. You can see the list, you can see the actual rating that some of these diagrams have. Let's click on some of them to look at them. So as you can see, you can rate it from 0 to 10. And wow, this is really cool. If we actually click on the diagram to enlarge it, let's see what types of information we can find from this network diagram. Wow, well this is somebody, of course, that is starting to take security more seriously, because you can see how they've blanked out all of the information on that diagram. So that's a pretty good a diagram, of course not showing or highlighting what I wanted to show you folks. So let's see if we can pull up another one, and well, needless to say, we can see pretty clearly the entire infrastructure, and well, we can see they're using BlackBerry and we can see they're using Linux systems. It might not be too clear for you folks to actually see the intricate details, but I'm also able to view the external as well as internal address ranges that they're actually using, and wireless access points, what their hot site is. Although this is a phenomenal diagram, it's not something that you would want to actually make publicly available, because with this diagram, effectively, we have the client's blueprint. So this was another just quick example of how we can collect some of this information publicly. And if we'll look at one more, wow, they're really getting nice with their diagrams, or they're getting very artistic. Again, we can see, although I can't go into this much detail here with this little diagram, we can already see that they're running Unix systems, they're running VLANs with Windows systems as well. I can see that they're using McAfee, Blue Coat, and so I've already been able to get information on the company's design without actually even connecting to their systems. So folks, this was the diagram from ratemynetworkdiagram.com. Again, quite easily being able to see how and some of the techniques we can use to locate internal URLs and also internal IP addresses. So naturally, companies still actually have internal web portals, let's say. Of course, we can go along and use Google and start searching for more of this information on the company, just as simple as the company name with any kind of additional keywords. And we can use an array of these tools to extract this information. Here's just some of the other ones that I didn't mention. The third one is RobText, which I showed you folks. And as I mentioned, we can also do the footprinting through good old-fashioned Google queries. So as another quick example, let's say I wanted to go along here and I wanted to specifically look for let's say terminal servers that are available. Let's go along to Google, and with Google I can use what we call advanced query strings or operators. So search operators is of course what they're more technically called, and first off, before I just jump into that, let me just bring up search operators. And this is a great resource website. It's called googleguide.com. And as you can see, it's giving us quite a lot of information, such as what are these operators. The operators will allow us to effectively filter out a lot of information that we would otherwise just be having to trawl through. So in a sense, we can specify, well, all in URL. So only look, if we look at, let's say, a web search, we want to say all in URL as an example. So looking for keywords either in a URL, in the title. We can also specify to look for images, groups, directories. And if we go along to the next section there, part 1, the query input, well, no real rocket science here, folks, as you can see, or you will see in about 3 seconds. If I click on going directly to the first result, yeah, we can see it's looking at California driving, and of course we'll see what types of results are coming back. And if we look at some of the exercises that we can do, well, you know, there's a large array of these search operators that we can use, which I'll be helping you folks realize that we don't have to use the manual techniques that I'm about to show you to go through this. There are simple automated ways that we can use to simplify this. But what we've also got to still understand at the same time, especially when I teach some of the training courses out there, I don't just teach, I do a lot of consultancy in both penetration testing as well as in digital forensics. So I've got to tell you folks that although the ethical hacking is one of the most important aspects of your security profession, it's also another very important aspect to be able to understand from digital forensics point of view of what effects it would have. Would those types of attacks be easily traceable? So digital forensics as well as penetration testing, ethical hacking really work hand in hand, and you want to look at both areas of expertise as something you want to put in your belt as the ability to be able to perform in ethical hacking as well as in digital forensics. So I'm going to just go back to Google and show you a quick example. And my point here was that we've got to be able to do a lot of these tests by being able to understand what's underneath the bonnet or what's underneath the hood of the engine. I always get mixed up whether I'm in Europe or the US, if it's the trunk, if it's the bonnet. And so we really want to look underneath the cover of the engine, and if we don't understand what we are doing from a manual perspective, meaning are we able to go through and not just use tools that will be a point and click, we've got to be able to do these tests manually. We truly won't be able to truly get the results we're looking for when you're doing a pen test. So I'm going to just use a simple query. I'm going to use all in URL. I'll just bring my website back up. So I'm going to use all in URL. And I'm going to look for TS Web. And I'm going to specify the site operator to go and search only on EDUs. So all in URL, TS Web, site, :.edu. And even without clicking search, I could see that it came back with 1,200 results in less than 20 seconds. So quite a lot of results there. As an example, I can now go along and click on the BUMC, which is your Boston University Medical Campus. And yeah, I'm not going to, of course, be installing that, but if we look at the fact that I've been able to find out the web servers that are running for Boston University, specifically looking for remote desktop web connections, so terminal services. This, of course, took me no time, and the biggest problem here right now, folks, is that there's no sign on this website saying I cannot enter. Of course, you've got to have the beware of the dog little sign that tells people to stay out of the network. It's very, very important. They didn't, of course, with this simple query. So that was the search query, all in URL, tsweb site.edu. For some other resources, you want to definitely go and check out Johnny Long's website. And Johnny Long's very recognized as a security professional, written a lot of books, but he's also very much into giving back to the community, and he created this portal called Hackers for Charity, where people that don't have much, let's say, references in actually doing penetration tests, with Johnny, he gives you the ability to help out on some of the projects they may have, typically the not-for-profit or mission projects, and you can become part of the team to help out doing some of what you do best, and you would then get a letter of reference saying what you did, of course, and also doing some of the assessments for a good cause. But the point that I wanted to make with Johnny Long is that he was the original creator of this GHDB, your Google Hacking Database. And as you can see, you should see in another 3 seconds, there's about 1,500 plus minus GHDB queries that can be used, all in different areas such as in the categories of advisories, vulnerabilities, error messages, files containing juicy information, files that might be what is thought to be hidden by the developer and is actually still left like a configuration file with admin passwords that are still left, available in clear text, naturally becomes a pretty large problem. So we can simplify this now, and I'm going to go back to my backtrack system. Of course, if we have to go through these with using manual techniques, it might take us way too long. So if I go back to the start and go to backtrack, I will wait for it to catch up so you can see exactly which tool I was using. And that's caught up. I am going to be launching SEAT, which stands for Search Engine Analysis Tool, I believe, or Assessment Tool. There you go. And as you can see, it's a pretty straightforward interface. So to start off with, on the very first tab, we've got the preparation. And under the preparation, I want to go along and let's say I want to add, let's say, we're going to just add eccouncil.org. We'll click plus. It's added eccouncil.org as a target. And then on the file menu, I want to go along and I want to load a query list, which means I can go in once I've clicked on the load the query list and actually preload that GHDB. This is the XML file that will actually stipulate what Google Hacking Database queries or Google operators can be used to try and extract this information. So once I double-clicked on that and selected that GHDB XML file, you can see how it populated this information into a SEAT. And so now I don't have to go along and actually manually enter the Google query strings to go and find this information. So this is still all on the preparation tab that I've done this. To summarize, I went and I just added a target. I typed in the address in that box that you've seen me highlight. I then clicked on the plus button, so I added that new target. Alternatively, you could have added a target list from a text file. But what I landed up doing next was actually loading a query list. So remember, the query list is really what we're going to actually go out and specify to actually search. So these are already loaded into Backtrack. And if you click on the databases again, you can see you also have other types of query lists that you can actually load there as well. So right now, no rocket science. This is pretty straightforward. I'll click OK. And then if I go along to the Execution tab, as you can see, I've got the ability to select all the different popular search engines. Of course, I can add to this as well if I wanted to. To keep it short, I'm going to just do this against Google. And I'm not going to let this run through the whole session because it might take a few hours. Of course, this is the EC Council target that I selected. So once I'm ready and I've configured these parameters, naturally I'm just going to click on that little button that's called Execute. So I'm going to start running this, and great tool to use if you have gone out the night before, you've had a few too many tequilas, and you need to walk into the office and look like you're busy. Well, of course, put your glasses on and let SEAT go out and do some Google Recon and Search Engine Recon. And nevertheless, you can see how it's going through each of these queries. At the end, you can see on the Analysis tab, once it's finished the actual scan, of course, we're going to then look at what have been positive hits. So what information have we been able to access that's publicly available, such as you might have a company that's got a web server infrastructure of about 20 servers that's all been recently updated, but the support admin forgot to actually remove the config file, and therefore that's exposing a huge amount of information. So whilst this is still executing, I'm actually going to stop that, and that should calm down in a second, because obviously I'll be using too much bandwidth then, and I'll start probably dropping off the session. But you folks have seen no real rocket science. I showed you the manual method of how you would go out and just simply use Google operators in a Google browser, or we can simplify this by using a tool such as the Search Engine Assessment tool. Now, I'm not always about just going into GUIs. I prefer to use some of the command line or shell tools. Before I do this, I just want to edit my session so I can make the text a lot bigger for you folks to see. In a second, you should be able to see that a lot clearer. So the first most important directory where you'll find all of your tools is going to be your pen test directory. As some of you folks are thinking, whoa, I'm not really too experienced in Linux, don't worry, during the training you are covering a huge array of using other tools. So my suggestion is, if you don't know Unix or Linux at all, to start playing around with something like Backtrack, or just a standardized, live CD like Ubuntu, without all the security tools on or installed at least. So I've gone into the pen test directory, and if I do a list there, you can see the other subdirectories of what tools we have available. And of course, if I now go along to change into some of those directories, such as the enumeration, we can see I've still got an array of additional enumeration tools that I can actually use. So if I change to the harvester directory, we can see that this is a Python script. And of course, a lot of men tend to not read any manuals, but I'm going to actually open up the README file, and you can see the harvester tool is great for gathering email accounts and subdomain names from different sources. So as you can see, you can either use Google or Bing, PGP, and if we go further down, it will give you a little bit more information. But sometimes they don't give you many details. So what you would probably want to look at doing in this instance is we would actually want to open up the harvester Python script with Nano, and we can then go along and look at the actual script code that's actually in that quite easily, giving us the actual details specifically of what will be taking place when using, just as in this example, this script. And I know it's not, of course, all that exciting, but we've always got to be able to go and look at the basics, the zeros and the ones, the code, the binary. Remember, there's only two types of IT engineers, those that speak binary and those that don't. Folks, you all want to make sure that you are the people that speak binary, or you are the IT professionals that speak binary. So, if I now run the harvester actual script without any syntax, in this instance, or this script is actually going to be nice enough to tell me what syntax I can use and even give me some examples. So if I use the -d for the domain, excuse me, and I use ing.nl, -l, as you can see, limit the number of results. I'm going to use 413, not to be too funny, but 413 is a good number, right? And then the -b, the data source, I'll be using Google. And then simply hit enter. As you can see, it's going out, doing the searches, not coming back with many results yet. I'm going to just save this scheme as the default. And whilst that's still running, of course, I can go back and continue to use some of the other tools that are available. And again, you can see we've even got some of these tools that you can run as specifically looking for Google. You can run some of these Google operators from scripts. And here's an example. We can use the Google Mail. Again, let's just change to that. And there we have another script. And once again, this is going to give us the ability to extract emails from Google results. So ing.nl. And you can see, well, we've got like 3 email addresses. The objective for me going through some of these tools that give sometimes varying results is important, because you cannot always rely on one tool or one technique to confirm your results. You want to try and at least use a general rule of using 3 different techniques, 3 different tools. And let's see if we had anything from the harvester. So nothing come back yet. But we could, of course, change that, and let's say, well, let's see if there's anything that Bing will be able to bring back. And wow, we've got a few more results with Bing, right? Quite a few hosts that's being found. Let's just take a quick look back at our slides. Of course, with using tools like Google Earth, we're able to zone straight into that location, and the image you would see in front of you is an image of the Pentagon. And of course, looking more specifically at the satellite pictures of a residence, you've got the ability to even use the street view. And when we start specifically looking for information on people, well, of course, you can go to a number of these websites that you'll see just me flipping through real quick. There's just to note a few of them. But if I'm going to be doing this, by going to Facebook and Twitter and Orkut, LinkedIn, of course, this could potentially take a long time. So one of my favorite tools for reconnaissance is able to be installed on a Windows system. It's able to be installed on a Linux system, an Apple Mac system. It is called Perturber Multigo. So if I go to backtrack information gathering, I want to run the Perturber Multigo CE. It's a community edition with the full version. I think it costs about $1,000 for a yearly access. What Multiga's done, or the developers of Multiga, is they've actually programmed in transforms, which means we've got this phenomenal looking interface that we can actually specify the information we're looking for. And I just want to log in here real quick. And if I now click on the little button in the top left there, I want to say new. And as you'll see in a few seconds, it will refresh. And what you're seeing in front of you now is effectively the Multigo interface. So the transforms really are links to collecting this information from a huge array of different resources. So you can, of course, go along and actually manage some of the transforms. As you can see, you can go along to the Manage, click on the Transforms, and we can see what type of information is going to be requested and from what directions or what resources on the internet, let's say. So we can manage these transforms. We can add our own if we want. If I go back to the Investigate, though, on the left-hand side you have your palette. And your palette is where you're going to be able to get the different types of information, whether it be information on the autonomous system numbers, on the DNS domain name, IP4, IPv4, location, MX records, NS records, name server records, net blocks, websites. So I'm going to start off with just the domain name. And what I do is I drag the domain name from the palette into the middle of the screen, which is effectively where you will find the information once you start the transform. This is where you're going to find some of the results. And we can change the view. Effectively, this is our mining area. So I'm going to go along and change that perturba.com to ing.nl. And once I've done that, I'm going to right-click on that and choose to run the transform. Now I could specifically choose to run transforms specific to DNS, let's say, or domain owner details, or email addresses. So I'm going to go out and show you how powerful this is by just running all the transforms. And when I click on that, it's saying, are you sure? Because this could take a long time to complete. And I'm going to put my password in again. Right, and it tends to do this, don't ask me why, but it keeps going kind of like in a loop. So if I click cancel, I know that it's actually running because in the background I can see some of the results already appear. And folks, as you can see, I've gone through quite a few different examples. You should see the screen refresh. There you go. And wow, look at the huge amounts of information I've been able to get already. As you can see from the screen on the right-hand side, I've got the ability to move to the different areas of where I've been able to find our telephone numbers, a whole bunch of different telephone numbers. I can, of course, zoom in and zoom out on these records. And if I move the little box over on the right-hand side, you can see how I've been able to pull a huge amount of people's names. I'll let that refresh so you can see that I'm not doing this, I'm not actually hacking into their systems at all, but that I'm able to get a huge amount of information from this simple tool. When I say simple, of course in the background it's using a lot of additional technologies, but there I've been able to get a whole bunch of email addresses already. It's a large amount of information there, folks. And that was just looking at the internet domain. Of course, if I go along and specify more specifics, such as I want to look at IP addresses and so forth, you could also real easily drag, let's say, what are their DNS name server records, and let's actually use a website rather. And there again if I choose to run the transforms. Now what you'll actually start seeing is how it actually links to already the results that I've got. I'll just wait for that to refresh. So this is otherwise looking at like competitive intelligence, where we can see what links there are to that organization. You can see we've actually also got a network IP address. Again, I'll just wait for that to refresh. There we go. So you can actually see I've got the network adapter there, and looking at the IP address, of course, I can then go and get further information on that as well. So I can actually right-click on that specifically, and I can then choose to get more details, such as the DNS from the IP address, IP owner details. So let's say I want to run all of that in that set. Again, you'll start seeing now how I am taking that a lot further, and we can see people's contact details there. So who's responsible for managing that namespace? So it's a great tool that we can use to go and collect more than enough information that we need. So the importance of this obviously would be to extract some of these pieces of information, the email addresses, let's say, and as we go further through the session, you'll see how we would escalate this further. So folks, this tool is called Multigo, Perturba Multigo, and I am going to just minimize that for now. So as you could see, going through footprinting, we can of course use Multigo that will go out and search for information from job sites, from websites, you name it. Monitoring target using alerts. There's Google Alerts, which is a content monitoring service that would automatically notify the users when new content from news sites, websites, blogs, videos, and so forth matches a set of search terms. And if we take a look at where we're at with the footprinting methodology, you'll see that we kind of at the stage where we've already covered most of these areas already, but obviously to follow on with the slides, it also gives you the ability to see what other tools that can be used and what techniques can be also used as well. So competitive intelligence is really looking at how that organization links with other organizations. So you can try and get some insiders information on what information can be used, such as the new release of a product, let's say. And so when you look at the competitive intelligence, you want to perhaps compare your products with your competitors' offering. You want to look at analyzing your market position compared to the competitors. What statistics do they have for their online presence, such as their information for how popular their website is. You can even sometimes pull up a list of competing companies, because you will actually see similarities in the search queries that would be used based upon what products could potentially be used. And when did this company begin? How did it develop? We can start looking at some of the American sites, such as the Edgar database, of course, if you're an American organization, Hoover's, LexisNexis, Dun & Bradstreet, which of course I know within the Netherlands you don't have these kind of certificate of good standings for businesses. It's really using different forms of providing this information. Here's some of the other resources that we can use as well for competitive intelligence. and then an additional array of tools that you can use beyond, of course, what I just showed you using Multigo. So these are all additional options. So you want to try and verify that your results are actual correct results because you've been able to verify that by using another tool. There's quite a few consulting companies that would actually offer competitive intelligence services. And then if we start looking more at the WHOIS lookup, of course, we've been able to get information already on the WHOIS information by using some of those tools from Dirk Loss. But I'm going to show you another quick favorite of mine as well. This is called centralops.net. If I just click on the domain dossier, and right now you can see I don't want to actually do a service scan because that will take my reconnaissance from being passive to active. Obviously with a service scan it will actually be connecting to those target systems. So in this instance all I'm simply doing now is still passive reconnaissance, and I want to find out the information on the WHOIS records. And as you can see, I've got quite a bit of information there already. Not very advisable to publish who the responsible person is there. Of course, what we can end up doing then, we've got the responsible person's email address there as well to the jan.bron@mail.ing.nl. And we can see that that's been changed to Marker van der Vlucht. And wow, quite a lot of information there, folks, with the responsible persons there. Even for big companies like this, it still shocks me to see how this information has just been made publicly available. Whilst if you go and do a search, let's say, on someone else, let's say EC Council, of course, there is some of that information, but other parts of that has been redacted. So not a whole lot of information, which is pretty much what I was hoping to expect. Now, there are services that you can actually use, and let's go and look at DNS proxy. So here I was just really looking, there's a lot of services that will actually offer this information through proxied systems, and the site is called domainsbyproxy.com. So when you use your online registrations, such as your ISP registers your domain name, you can actually choose to use a service such as Domains by Proxy, where, as you can see, your identity is nobody's business but ours. So within the registrations, they would simply be pointing to the Domains by Proxy service, and of course your information is not going to be publicly available. So this is about a 10 or $15 a year cost, but obviously it's going to be removing your publicly accessible information. So yeah, we saw how much information we were able to get from ING, and that's something that of course should not be publicly available, because I can then start scouring the web for more details on who these responsible people are. And obviously if I make some phone calls, do some social engineering, I'm going to get a whole bunch more information. So that was just another quick example. I'm not trying to personally pick on ING, but I wanted to show you folks that big companies are probably sometimes a lot slower in fixing some potential security weaknesses. So that was looking at using the tool Central Ops for getting some of this WHOIS information. There are an array of tools that you can actually use as well that could be installed. You'll see a list appear with some other online resources for WHOIS lookup tools. And then we can also see how we could look to specifically extract DNS information. Once again, we looked at using the Dirk Loss website to link in to a lot of online sources for collecting this information. So the first online website I showed you folks was the ServSniff, or the RobText that can be used to extract the DNS information. We've also got an array of interrogation tools as well, specifically against DNS. Just wait for it to refresh. There you go. And there's a huge array of these tools that you can use. So I'm just trying to give you folks additional material that's not sometimes in the actual course material. As an instructor, you want to go over and above what is actually available in the books. You can see we were also able to locate the network range very quickly just by using the ServSniff and the RobText earlier on. And Central Ops, we could have run the trace route as well. But here's an important point that I wanted to make as well, though. So let me just go back to Central Ops. And this time I'm going to specify to do a trace route. And if I go further down the list, we're not actually doing a trace route from the location I'm in right now, because this is actually being done from the actual Central Ops web server. So it's actually looking at that target IP address, and it's then going through, as you can see, the trace route. It's not coming from my location. So the trace route is actually being run from centralops.net in this instance. Which means, of course, it's going to be harder to trace who's actually trying to do a trace route against our organization. As far as the analysis is concerned, of course, trace routing is nothing new. It's very important to be a good security professional, to have a very solid understanding of TCP/IP. Remember, TCP/IP is a very, very well-rounded network protocol. And, of course, it's the default language that the Internet talks. There obviously are a lot of additional changes still coming down the line with IP version 6. You can even use some of these really cool-looking 3D trace routing tools. There's some of the actual trace routing tools that you can install as separate programs. And again, this is just to show you that you've got an array of different options. So you don't just have to use Linux as an example. Naturally, we can go and just use the WHOIS tools and a lot of additional command line tools that even Windows systems have built in, or of course we could use some of these tools that are sometimes not free. So the additional list would be tools like Visual Route Trace, GeoSpider, vTrace, 3D Visual Trace Route, and the list goes on. Now, mirroring an entire website doesn't take a lot of technical knowledge. So to actually download a website to local directory is pretty easy. We can use a number of spidering tools out there, from httrack to surfoffline.com to pagenest.com, and there's an additional array of tools that we can use, such as good old wget, WebRipper, Black Widow. And for us to try and find out more information on the company, such as the history, what they've been doing, so realistically what website changes they had a few years ago. Let's say we wanted to go and look at what information they had on their website in 2002. We could use the archive.org to look at this information that's been changed currently, but of course we want to go back in time and look at what information they had available, let's say 2002, excuse me. And this is another tool for monitoring web updates called Website Watcher. Tracking email communications, so monitor and also sometimes spy the delivered emails. So we can use email tracking, or which you would normally get with the auto response saying, yes, I've received this email, the read response. So you can use online sources such as readnotify.com, emailtrackerpro.com. Did they read it? And then for email tracking, much of the same as you would for the network tracking as well. So at this point, we've been able to look at footprinting using an array of resources. We spoke briefly about Google hacking techniques such as the Google operators, how we can use Seat to go out and collect this information pretty quickly, and of course how we can modify some of those complex search queries. What would a hacker do with that? Of course, if we're able to get the information that we have got, well, in a few moments I'm going to take you through what we can actually do with this information now. So here's a summary of some of those Google advanced search operators that I spoke about earlier on. Again, I'm trying to make sure, folks, that during these sessions you can never, map or demonstrate exactly what a live instructor-led class would be. Of course, we try and do that as much as possible, but within a 2-hour session, it's sometimes difficult to show you folks all of the actual elements, such as the very detailed step-by-step lab exercise that you folks will be doing as well after each module. So making sure that you're not just getting the theory. As you heard Sharon, about 70 to 80% of the course that you would potentially be taking is all hands-on. So these are some of the resources I already showed you, the Google Hacking Database from Johnny Long, and then a large array of additional tools. For me, like I mentioned, when we're doing pen tests, you don't want to have to use 6 or 7 different systems with a whole bunch of additional GUI tools installed if you can actually just simply use a command line tool or a solution like Backtrack with these 350 plus tools already pre-installed. It makes it, of course, a lot easier. So what can we do with this information now? Let's go back to Backtrack. And if we look at Multigo and the results, remember this is the free version. So with the free version, I'm not able to actually extract this information into a text file. Of course, I can copy it, but it's going to be manual. If I go along and say I want to save this to a report, it's not going to enable me to do that. as you can see, it's grayed out. If I click on the icon, icons are not activated. But of course I can quite easily copy that information. On the right hand side I can also look at the detail views. So if I actually click that and view it as a window, I can then just change and look at what properties there are available. So a lot more detail, of course. I tend to move my whole thing around now, so I'll just get that back to where we're at. And what can we do with this now, folks? Well, sit back and let's take a look at one of my favorite tools. And this tool is called the Social Engineering Toolkit, or SET. So before I just pull up that tool, let me take you to the SET website. And within a few seconds we should see the Social Engineer website appear. By using some of these tools that now have been integrated into tools such as Backtrack, it truly makes what would have been a very sophisticated type of an attack, makes it a lot easier. And I don't know why mine's taking so long to get there. Oh, maybe their site might be down. So I won't wait too long on this. You've got the address there. If you just go and search on Social Engineer or Social Engineering Toolkit, you will find their link quite quickly. It's taking pretty quick to get to their site. Not exactly sure why, but I'm going to just go along and bring up that tool. It's in the exploits directory in a folder called SET. And the first thing I want to do is actually just update SET. So I'll run the /set update. And we'll give it a few seconds to update. Now, SET does actually work hand in hand with Metasploit. Metasploit is a fully well, it's a full framework, a full exploit framework whereby you can actually launch all of your attacks by using this framework. Now, SET will actually use some of the components of Metasploit, and let's take a look at running SET and just see what exactly we can do. So I have the latest version. With SET, it's effectively going to allow me to launch my attacks right now by using a social engineered assisted or digital social engineering attack. So as you can see with the actual wizard menu there, it really is not complex. These types of attacks would have taken a lot longer to set up manually in the past. And so I want to take you folks through a quick demonstration. And well, let's have a look at, we're speaking about cloning a website or taking it offline. Let's look at some of the website attack vectors. Actually, before we do that, we'll start off with the spear phishing, because I was mentioning we've got a lot of email addresses from ING. So what could potentially be done at this point? If we look at what options we have through the spear phishing attack, you can see that the set email attack method allows you to specifically craft email messages and send them to a large or small number of people with attached file format malicious payloads. That means if you actually send an email to somebody with a PDF, an attached PDF document, that PDF is potentially going to be a malicious PDF document that will actually allow a remote command to be created from that client machine. So you've got to remember, we now targeting the internal clients or the internal users, where we can actually even spoof the email address to come from one of the other executives in the company. And as you can see from the screen there, it's pretty much saying to us, if you want to spoof your email address, be sure SendMail is installed. It is installed in Backtrack 4, by the way, and you would want to change the config, set config, SendMail equals off flag to SendMail equals on. So that's just in the set configuration file. And so there's two options of running this attack. One is getting your feet wet and letting set do everything for you, which is option 1. Whilst option 2, the second, is to create your own file format payload and use it in your own attack. So either way, as your folks will see, it doesn't take rocket science to run this type of an attack. So I would go along and I'm going to say I want to perform a mass email attack. So option 1, I'm now going to be able to select one of these payloads, so either a custom written DLL or a custom written document. I'm going to pick on Adobe today and just use PDF, so option 15. And I'm going to select to use a built-in blank PDF for the attack, so option 2. And then this is the important section here, folks, that I can actually use encrypted sessions. So I will send an email to a person, and that a malicious attachment will enable a backdoor to be created by using HTTPS as an example over port 443. So I'm going to use the Windows Interpreter Reverse HTTPS interpreter. So I will select 7, enter the port to connect back on, which if you hit the default, it's going to be 443 for SSL. And as you can see, it's generating this all for us. So no real rocket science. This is one of the reasons why I've said these types of attacks would have taken a couple of hours to put all the pieces together if you had to do this manually. We'll just give it another few more seconds. There we go. So as you can see, it actually generated that, and all payloads get sent to the SRC program junk template.pdf directory. As you can see, as an added bonus, you might want to use the file format creator in set to create your attachment as well. But of course, the attachment will be imported with the file name of template. Whatever we've named it. So do we want to actually enter a new a name for that file, and we could just keep it as default, or I'll just change mine to wayne.pdf. And in this instance, I now can either attack a single email address, or I can do this and send this to 500 people. Of course, I only need one person that's actually going to open up that attachment. And, of course, they don't even sometimes have to open up that attachment. Sometimes they can just simply preview that. The idea behind this is if you send somebody a PDF from somebody that is known in the company, and they do open this because they believe that it's from somebody in the company, of course, that's a pretty big problem, because when they actually open that up, we're targeting client-side weaknesses. So we could simply say, well, no, we're not going to do any of these. I'm going to return to the main menu because I didn't set up any of the email services. You could even send that out by using Gmail, by the way. But the other example that I wanted to show you folks, because it was on the topic we were speaking about, is the website cloning. And I wanted to show you one or two website attack vectors. We'll be wrapping this up in a few moments. We'll be breaking into a Q&A session probably in the next 12 minutes and 9 seconds. I don't want to be too specific there. Okay, so what is this? This is webjacking. It's a method that was introduced by a geek by the name of White Sheep, as well as the Engines and as well as the Backtrack team. It simply utilizes iframe replacements to make the highlighted URL link to appear legitimate. However, when clicked, a window pops up and then it's then replaced. So you can see we've actually got a few of the different genre of web attacks. So we've got the good old-fashioned Java applet, the Metasploit browser, the credential harvester, and the credential harvester is one that is very, very, very powerful, and it's going to be the one that I want to take you folks through. Now, if you look at the harvester itself, it's going to utilize a method where it's going to clone a website, and let's say you're sitting at McDonald's or another hotspot that offers free internet access. We could actually escalate this attack pretty complex in that within a few minutes we'll be able to clone a website. It will be made to look exactly as that website, and that person will think they're actually connecting to the banking website or Twitter or Facebook, whatever it might be, whilst they're actually logging in. The details are being sent to the hacker, so we are going to be effectively harvesting those credentials. So how does this work? Well, we are going to select the option 3, and as you can see, we can either use the web templates that are actually built in and available. So if I choose option 1 just to show you, we can see that we've got options such as Gmail, Google, Facebook, Twitter. You could even use Java required, so this is just the defaults. Who should we pick on today? I think we should pick on Twitter. So if I hit 5, enter, what I would then do in the attack is, of course, I would have to do some kind of DNS poisoning, because the person would actually have to go out and enter this IP address, or I would have to do a poisoning attack so that they, when they type in, let's say, ing.nl, well, of course, that's going to redirect them to my cloned version of that website. So in this instance, let me bring up my browser. I hit enter now. I'm browsing the clone website on my Linux system. And of course that's what the Twitter looks like. If I now enter the username, and click on the sign in button, of course it's just pretty much looped. But if I go back to backtrack, I can actually see what the username and password field was, which you'll see in a second, appear. So this is what is meant by a harvesting attack. I literally coerced them into going to my website, which can be done without them even knowing about it. So again, we're talking about reconnaissance and footprinting, and I wanted to give you folks a good insight into what's going to be done with the information that we've been able to extract already. So the next thing to look at would be, let's try another one. And we're going to go along, and this time we'll use the credential harvester again. But I want to go along and look at where you would log in to, let's say, ING, and I would need to copy that URL. Incidentally, the set also supports HTTPS. So this time I'm going to say I want to clone a website. So option 2, I'm not going to use a web template, and I need to enter the URL that's going to be used. As you can see, it supports both HTTP and HTTPS. So here I'm going to clone the login page very quickly. As you could see, it created a clone of that very, very quickly. And now if I go back and refresh this, you can actually see how quickly I cloned that website, folks, and it does not look any different to the real ING website. But bear in mind that this is a cloned version of that. And naturally, needless to say, the person's going to go in and try and log in. And their password, let's say, and they try to log in, and that's our parameter. So of course I just entered some random characters for the username and password, but you're able to see how easy it is for me to harvest credentials from people logging in to, let's say, their bank account. And that was not a very sophisticated type of an attack. This obviously was an attack that would redirect them into connecting to my site. And, well, as you saw, pretty quick and easy type of an attack. If you look at the built-in templates as well that you've got, obviously there's a lot of people that will be logging into, if I go back to the web templates, to Facebook. Facebook, of course, being a very big target. And send the request a little slow. That's probably because it's got the wrong details now. That's because I didn't actually hit enter, making sure it was running. I was thinking, what am I doing wrong? So there you have it, folks. Here is the cloned version of Facebook. And needless to say, as you've seen before, put your details there, boom, you're going to be able to harvest those credentials of somebody that thinks they're logging into Facebook. So, yeah, this is very, very, very powerful, looking at some of these new attack tools. And just to summarize, there of course are an array of tools you saw me demonstrate through this session. Some of them that's not all in the slides. This is the slides that unfortunately cannot be made available to you. These are the slides that are used for the Certified Ethical Hacker version 7 training. And of course you will be getting given printed books and a huge array of DVDs, of additional white papers, you name it. You're going to get it with your course material. They're, of course, finishing off on the last few slides here, folks, before we jump into a Q&A session. Here's some of the additional footprinting tools that we can use, from DNS Digger to Domain Name Analyzer, Trillion, dig web interface, domain research tool, and I won't mention all of those, but of course it's hopefully given you a very good understanding of what to be expecting when taking your Certified Ethical Hacker Training course. There's some of your countermeasures, of course. So when it comes to footprinting, make sure that you are not exposing unnecessary information. That's the purpose of course, doing a penetration test, whether it be you as a company employee doing the pen test for the organization, or whether it be hiring an external organization. You need to ensure that the information that could be damaging is not publicly available. So, of course, make sure you've got your IDSs, your firewalls, and any other type of web application firewall that's going to pick up some of these attacks. And, well, we've covered an array of these tools already. As you've seen, this is specifically looking at the footprinting stages when actually doing a penetration test. So, first of all is to get that get out of jail card, which is the authorization to do the penetration test, authorizing you to use hacking tools, define the scope of the assessment, perform the internet footprinting, gather competitive intelligence information, perform the WHOIS information, and then of course looking at the email footprinting, again looking at using some of the tools that I've covered, perform website footprinting, network footprinting, DNS footprinting, do the Google hacking, document all of your findings very, very importantly. But folks, in summary, you can see I picked this module because it's a relatively small module and it gave me the ability to go out and show you folks just how much information is covered in a small module such as the footprinting, and also to give you a taste of the theoretical information as well as the practical information, and the hands-on, more importantly. So it's been a great pleasure presenting to you folks. I'm going to hand the ball back to Sharon, who will manage the Q&A, or perhaps Nikolai would do. I'm not 100% certain.
Thank you, Wayne. If any of you have any questions, please feel free to type into your questions into the question box. I have one question here, Wayne. Would you use social engineering in the footprinting stage?
Absolutely. Think about it. The social engineering, although you're not launching attacks, I was using SET realistically just to show you folks what you could do with this information. So it's almost, you know, watching the first 5 minutes of a movie and then watching the end of the movie. I did that so you folks could appreciate, without, you know, going through the other modules in the CH course, what a person would actually do with using some of this information that we're able to gather publicly. So, yes, social engineering would be done through the reconnaissance phase, absolutely, because you might be calling up the help desk and trying to find out information on what version firewalls they have, or what operating systems they're using on the client desktops, so that you can better prepare your payloads that you would launch through the attack phase. Next question.
Okay, Wayne. Next question. All right. Do you want to know if your presentation file in PDF will be available for them to download and preview?
I'm not sure. Are you recording the session?
Yes, I have a recording of this session. So I will pass the recording to Nikolai, the General Manager for New Horizons Bulgaria. And for those of you who would like to view the recording, please go back to him.
Alrighty.
All right then. I think you did a very good session, Wayne, since I'm sure a lot of them understood. If any of you have any questions, we will put up a email address at the end of the sessions for you to contact with any questions that you might have. Before I leave, though, I'd like to pass the session over to Nikolai. He has presentation just to share with you all some of the promotions that are happening in New Horizons, Bulgaria.
Здравейте! Радвам се на големия интерес, който предизвика нашата сесия. Това, което имаме от подготвено за нашите гости, е специален бонус за всички посетители на нашия вебинар, който включва 5% за всички гости, ако решат да се запишат за предстоящите гарантирани учебни сесии за Ethical Hacker или Forensics Investigator, които са планирани за 29 до 29 април е заявката, а те са планирани за 9 май е първият курс за Certified Ethical Hacker. На 16 май, веднага след това, продължаваме с Forensics Investigator. Така че тези сесии, ако това, което сте чули днес в тези около 90 минути, ако ви е харесало, ако мислите, че го използвате в работата, заповядайте на някои от нашите обучения или на Ethical Hacker. Ако имате достатъчно опит в тази област, може след допълнителен тест директно да заявите участие за Forensics Investigator. За контакти, това са контактите на нашия офис, 421-0044 телефонния номер. learning@newhorizons.bg е нашия имейл адрес. Така, продължаваме с въпросите.
Nikolai, I think there are some questions in the question box in Bulgarian. Maybe you could present them to Wayne.
Yes, just to check. Questions. Sorry, just I need some time to find the успехи от господин Исапов. Така, образователно, благодаря ви. Thank you. Ще има ли последващи курсове? Will be there additional trainings after these dates? Yes, we will have additional dates. Тоест ще имаме допълнителни сесии. Thank you very much for Wayne. This is in English. Thank you for presentation. Okay. This is, благодаря ви колеги за обратната връзка. Ще се радвам да се видим и в нашия офис. Също така искам да кажа, че имаме и планиран отворен ден или отворена вечер. Предстои да бъде финализирано през май месец, така ще изпратим покана за всички, които имат желание да видят някои от нашите лектори на живо. Благодаря ви. Thank you.
Alright then, if you have any other questions, please forward your questions to the email to Nikolai. I hope you all had a great session. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks.